Good morning, everyone. It is great to be here in San Francisco, meeting with leaders and conducting the business of making Canada's economy even stronger. Canada is a Pacific economy, and we're working to strengthen and deepen our cooperation with the 20 other Pacific economies here at APEC. APEC represents almost 3 billion people and over 60% of global GDP. These are economies that are dynamic, growing, and that recognize that by working together, we can build prosperity that works for people across the Pacific from north to south. There's huge potential for Canada in opening up more trade along the Pacific. It's why we launched our Indo-Pacific strategy last year and why ministers from across the government have been working with counterparts in the region to strengthen Canada's presence and forge new opportunities. On lance ces initiatives pour tirer parti de tout le potentiel que cette région dynamique représente pour le Canada. Le potentiel de créer des bons emplois, le potentiel d'élargir le marché mondial pour les entreprises canadiennes, le potentiel de resserrer nos relations avec des partenaires pour défendre nos valeurs. Comme la démocratie, la lutte contre les changements climatiques et la création d'économies centrées sur le bien-être de tous. C'est nos enjeux prioritaires. But the very foundation of all this work must be built on peace and security. There's a lot of turbulence in the world right now. We continue to call out Russia's illegal and ongoing invasion of Ukraine, and I raised it in all of my interactions here at APEC. I also raised Canada's concerns about the heartbreaking situation in Israel, Gaza, and the West Bank, and the deep, deep impact it's having on people all around the world. For the hostages taken 40 days ago and the families that are waiting in agony for their release, for the human tragedy that is unfolding in Gaza, for the suffering of everyone enduring this ongoing violence and all of those around the world who've lost loved ones. That loss is being deeply felt. And Canada, like other APEC partners, has lost a number of our own. J'ai aussi remercié les leaders d'avoir déployé des pompiers au Canada cet été. Partout dans le monde, on subit les ravages des changements climatiques et on s'entraide les uns les autres. Et c'est dans cet esprit de coopération qu'on discute de ce qu'on fait au Canada en matière d'énergie et de technologie propre pour créer des opportunités ensemble. APEC is about cooperating so we can build stronger economies and grow the middle class. Canada is a founding member of APEC, and today, 4 out of 5 of our top merchandise trading partners are APEC economies. This is a growing trade relationship thanks to efforts like the CPTPP and our Indo-Pacific strategy, and also because Canada is firmly oriented towards the economy of the future. A lot of businesses and countries like what they see when they look at Canada. Le Canada est une démocratie forte et stable, avec des institutions solides qui peuvent résister aux pressions. Notre économie est alimentée à environ 84% par de l'électricité propre. On prend des décisions stratégiques intelligentes, comme investir dans la mise en place d'une chaîne d'approvisionnement en véhicules électriques et en batteries qui va soutenir les travailleurs pendant les décennies à venir. They see a country with a strong middle class and a workforce that is inclusive, where women's participation is higher than ever and is growing. And since we're in California near Silicon Valley, it also bears mentioning that businesses in other countries see all the innovation coming out of Canada in AI and quantum computing and across tech. I had a chance to meet with leaders from the Canadian and American tech sector and hear about all the momentum there is around Canadian businesses. And our APEC partners see it too. Malaysia just signed a cybersecurity deal with BlackBerry. Innovative ideas aren't just about what happens in high-tech industries. It's about getting creative and applying new thinking to big problems. That's why I met with growers and grocers and innovators to talk about how we can lower the cost of food for people, including for Canadians. People at home continue to worry about the cost of feeding their families. We delivered on the grocery rebate and are calling on grocers to stabilize prices. But we know that with climate change and continued disruption from major powers like Russia, we have to think about the issue of food costs from every angle. En repensant la logistique, en mettant sur pied des chaînes d'approvisionnement plus résilientes, en renforçant le commerce et en trouvant des moyens moins coûteux de cultiver des aliments nutritifs, On peut aider à faire baisser les prix d'épicerie pour les Canadiens. At the end of the day, it's all about making people's lives better. Canada is a destination of choice for investors around the world. Indeed, the OECD's most recent numbers shows that Canada is in the top 3 biggest destinations for foreign investment. Here at APEC, we're making sure that all of our Pacific partners understand the benefit of doing business in Canada. As always, I had lots of conversations, both formally and informally, with a huge range of my fellow leaders. Cette année, les thèmes de l'APEC portent sur l'innovation, l'inclusion et l'interconnexion. Ce sont des concepts que le Canada comprend très bien. On comprend très bien que tout est interrelié. Economic policy is climate policy, is security policy, is social policy. It all works together. And multilateral meetings like this one are crucial to making sure that we are supporting the middle class and meeting this moment on every front. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Prime Minister. We'll now go to question period. Nous allons prendre une question, un suivi, en commençant avec David Akin.
Good morning. Good afternoon, Prime Minister. Good morning, Prime Minister. There we are. These summits are all about leader-to-leader things, so let me start with a simple one. How are things these days between you and President Xi?
Canada, of course, is in a challenging time in our relationship with China. We know that the experience we went through with the arbitrary detention of the two Michaels set a real challenge into our relationship. But at the same time, we have worked together on issues that matter. At COP15 in Montreal, we brought the world together with ambitious goals on protecting nature and fighting climate change. So we will work with China where we can. In other areas, we're going to be competing with China for trade share, for diversification of Asian economies, and building stronger critical mineral supply chains, for example, that are directly competing with areas in which China has dominance. And the other thing that we're going to do is continue to challenge China on areas we fundamentally disagree, around democracy, around human rights, around respect for the rule of law. It is a complex relationship with China, but Canada will continue to both stay strong, anchored in our values, and look for opportunities to contribute to economic growth and opportunities for Canadians.
Over the last couple of days, we saw President Xi and President Biden take that relationship in a different direction, a warming direction. I wonder what you make of that, and then two, when and how might we expect the Canada-China relationship to take that same turn?
I think all of us here at this conference saw the positive meeting between President Xi and President Biden as a good sign. We need to make sure that we are engaging constructively across all partners. One of the things about APEC is it is an extraordinarily diverse group of countries that share a common ocean. And because of that, having these frank and direct conversations about how and where we can work together is really important. And Canada will continue to engage at various levels with China as we try to move forward in a more positive direction, but stay very strongly anchored in our principles and values.
Next question.
Good morning, Prime Minister. Ashley Burke, CBC News. Besides saying hello to President Xi, why didn't you have a formal meeting or a conversation on the sidelines with him? And did you make any effort to do so?
Actually, in addition to saying hello to President Xi, I talked about how we need to keep our officials and teams working together to try and create constructive dialogue around issues that matter to us individually, but also matter to the world. This is part of the ongoing engagement that Canada needs to have around the world, including with countries we disagree with.
Monsieur Trudeau, juste en français là-dessus, qu'est-ce que vous avez dit entre Monsieur Xi et...
Ben, évidemment, je l'ai salué, mais j'ai aussi dit que ce serait important que nos gens, nos diplomates continuent d'être engagés sur des enjeux entre nos deux pays, mais aussi des enjeux qui sont importants pour le monde. Ici, à APEC, c'est super pertinent qu'on ait tellement de pays divers et différents qu'on continue d'être engagés de façon constructive, dans la mesure du possible, les uns avec les autres.
Is it too politically risky right now for you back home to have a formal meeting with President Xi at the summit in light of the public inquiry into allegations of Chinese election meddling?
We have always been very, very clear, going back years now, with our concerns around foreign interference, and we're going to continue to do everything necessary to keep Canadians safe. That's something that people expect, both of our diaspora communities, but also of our democracy. At the same time, we have to look for constructive ways to engage in the global economy, and China remains an important player.
Next question.
Steve Chase, Globe and Mail. Would you describe Xi Jinping as a dictator?
Look, China's a one-party state. I don't think anyone would call it a democracy.
En français, s'il vous plaît.
La Chine est un pays à un seul parti. Il n'y a pas personne qui dirait que c'est une démocratie.
In 2013, you described China as a basic dictatorship. Mr. Xi was already in charge. Mr. Biden, the President of the United States, which is our security guarantor, also called him a dictator. Why won't you call him that?
Listen, we can get into all sorts of different definitions. The fact is, he's not running a democracy. It's an authoritarian state.
Oui, bonjour, M. Trudeau, Laurence Martin de Radio-Canada. C'est toujours pas clair pour moi. Pourquoi est-ce que vous n'avez pas eu de rencontre bilatérale avec la Chine à ce sommet? Est-ce que c'est parce que vous n'aviez pas le temps, vous ne vouliez pas, c'était pas votre priorité? Pourquoi pas?
Bien, j'ai eu un bon échange avec le président Xi, mais l'important, c'est d'avoir une approche avec nos ministres, nos différents diplomates pour recommencer à avoir des engagements constructifs. Je pense que les gens comprennent à quel point on a eu des différends et des défis importants dans les relations avec la Chine au cours des dernières années. Et il y a un processus et un engagement graduel et continu qui est en train de se faire vers, j'espère, une rencontre éventuelle, mais je ne pense pas qu'on est à ce point-là maintenant.
Est-ce que vous aviez peur de recréer un moment tendu comme il y a eu au G20 à Bali?
Non, j'ai pas peur de rien. Je pense que on cherche à avoir des engagements constructifs où on va continuer de mettre l'emphase sur nos valeurs et nos principes, mais on va chercher à travailler de façon collaborative. Il y a tellement de défis importants dans le monde qu'il va falloir qu'on essaye de travailler ensemble, même avec des gens avec lesquels on est en désaccord. Et avec la Chine, il y a des enjeux sur lesquels on peut travailler ensemble. L'exemple, c'est la COP 15 à Montréal, où on a pu travailler avec la Chine pour mettre un encadrement extrêmement ambitieux sur la protection de la biodiversité pour les décennies à venir.
Next question.
Good morning. Laura Dillon King, Bloomberg News. We've heard this week that it's not too detrimental to Canada to not be at the table with Indo-Pacific Economic Framework members because we already have the CPTPP and we have economic relationships with those countries. But yesterday, President Biden announced a critical minerals deal that would strengthen supply chains in those regions and increase competition. It also includes an investment accelerator. So how harmful is it to Canada to not be at that table, and why aren't we there yet?
First of all, we have critical minerals engagements and arrangements with the United States that is strengthening and seeing a lot of very, very real investments and supports in Canada. So yes, we have a very strong critical mineral strategy, including work we're doing with Australia and Indonesia, and that's going to continue. It's good that the United States is engaging. I think we need to remember that President Trump pulled the U.S. out of the Trans-Pacific Partnership. He lost the potential trade deals that Canada stayed in. We have free trade deals with a significant number of Asian economies. So I understand and totally agree with President Biden that with Congress blocking his ability to pursue formal free trade deals, he should be trying to engage, and that's what he's doing with IPEF. And we're, of course, supportive, and we'd be happy to be at the table. But the work we get to do by being part of CPTPP on real, full trade deals is of tremendous benefit to Canada, and will continue to be.
En français, sur les PEF, est-ce que vous êtes déçu de ne pas y être?
La réalité, c'est que le président Trump a fait le choix de retirer les États-Unis de l'accord de libre-échange avec les économies du Pacifique. Le Canada est resté dedans. Donc, nous, on a des accords de libre-échange avec un grand nombre d'économies extrêmement importantes dans la région. Alors, je comprends tout à fait pourquoi le président Biden, et je l'appuie absolument, de vouloir s'engager de façon constructive ou productive avec eux, malgré le fait que le Congrès républicain ne le laissera pas signer des accords de libre-échange. Alors oui, on aimerait bien en faire partie pour pouvoir participer, mais on a un accord de libre-échange avec les États-Unis. On a des accords de libre-échange avec la région qui sont bien plus utiles que cet encadrement que Biden est en train de travailler très fort pour créer.
And then the U.S. has raised concerns about China's heavy investment in Mexico for the auto industry, given our efforts to create a North American electric vehicle supply chain that is less reliant on China. You met with the Mexican president this week. He met with Xi Jinping, and they announced, more collaboration in that area. Was that a concern that you raised with the Mexican president during your bilateral?
I think one of the things we want to see is a strong and growing Mexican economy. And of course, within the framework of our North American free trade deal, within the work that we're doing to create a tremendously competitive auto sector with deep links across North America, but also investments in energy and renewables, in manufacturing. There's a lot of exciting things going on in our relationship with Mexico. But of course, there's going to be a lot of interest from around the world, including from China, in growing economies like Mexico's. And we're going to continue to make sure that our relationship and the prosperity of Mexico is deeply linked to North American prosperity.
Prochaine question.
Judy Trin with CTV News. I'm hoping you'll oblige one extra question from our local CTV stations.
Why don't you start with that one?
There are concerns among many Canadians after watching what happened in Vancouver just before you came to APEC, how you were accosted at a restaurant. We'd like to know whether or not you have any concerns about the level of anger out there in regards to Palestine and how it's affecting you, as well as whether or not what this says about your safety in a place where you normally feel very comfortable. BC is very close to your heart.
I appreciate the question, but it's not about me. I have been clear for weeks now that Canadians lashing out in anger to each other, whether it's a woman in a hijab getting spat on, or a Jewish kid going to a college campus that's not feeling safe, or gunshots fired at Jewish schools, or a terrifying rise in Islamophobia alongside the significant rise and very troublesome rise in anti-Semitism. Right now, the grief, the anger, the despair so many Canadians are feeling is bleeding over into each other. We are not a country where Canadians should be scared of other Canadians. We're one of those places in the world where diversity has been a source of richness, of depth, of strength for our country. And I think we all have to commit ourselves every day to be there to listen to each other and to have compassion for each other. I mean, the conversations I've had over the past weeks in mosques and in Jewish community centers, there's nobody who is rationally wishing ill on one of their neighbors, regardless of what their religion is or their story is or their background is. And yet we find ourselves in a moment where the intensity of the emotions, of the fear, of the grief that people are going through is having Canadians forget a little bit about who we are. And my job as Canadian Prime Minister is to help bring Canadians back together, to understand that if Canadians can't figure out how to get along and remember to be compassionate and empathetic towards each other, then where in the world is a solution for the conflict and the tensions in the Middle East going to come? We have an important role to play, and we need all Canadians to step up to meet that role.
Juste en français, très, très brièvement, est-ce que vous avez eu peur avec Vancouver?
C'est pas une question de comment je me sens, c'est une question de comment les Canadiens se sentent, parce qu'on est en train de voir trop de tensions, trop de violence, trop d'attaques contre la communauté musulmane, contre la communauté juive. Les Canadiens ne devraient pas avoir peur de leurs voisins. C'est le contraire de qui nous sommes en tant que Canadiens. Et ma job en tant que Premier ministre, c'est de faire tout ce que je peux pour rassembler les gens au Canada, pour qu'on se souvienne de qui nous sommes, pour pouvoir contribuer à un monde plus stable et pacifique.
Thank you for taking that question. The second question, given that the fall economic statement comes out next week and the fact that we see signs of a stalling economy as well as many people are still struggling financially, can your government exercise fiscal restraint at such a time? What are those challenges?
Well, first of all, we are a government that has always exercised fiscal restraint. We have the lowest deficit in the G7. We have the best debt to GDP ratio in the G7, the lowest debt as a proportion of the size of our economy. We're one of the 3 largest economies in the world that is rated by the independent rating agencies as a AAA top-tier economy with a responsible fiscal track. And one of the ways we have done that is by not doing what conservative politicians would want and cutting programs and services to Canadians, but by delivering supports for Canadians in the right ways. $10 a day childcare right across the country is social policy that supports families, that puts thousands of dollars back in their pockets and savings, but also is an economic policy that grows the opportunities in the workforce. There's no reason for conservative politicians to be against that, and yet they are. Dental care for low-income Canadians. This is an economic policy in addition to a social policy. And again, conservative politicians voted against that. We continue to deliver investments in Canadians while remaining responsible fiscally and have all the way through, and that's more of what I'm excited to share next week with the fall economic update, a demonstration that we know how to continue to be fiscally responsible while we make the investments that are going to grow the economy and support Canadians.
Next question.
Hi, Prime Minister James McCartan, Canadian Press. Shifting to Israel-Hamas. You, in your conversation with Benny Gantz, the readout from your office said that you strongly emphasized the importance of taking all possible measures to protect civilians and to minimize casualties. Did you, in fact, use the expression maximum restraint that you used earlier in the week with the Prime Minister?
I'm consistent in all my conversations. Canada is extremely concerned about the number of civilian casualties in Gaza, both because the loss of life is heartbreaking to see, but also because the pathway towards a secure, viable, independent Jewish state alongside a secure, viable, independent Palestinian state is getting more difficult with all the hardship that Palestinians are going through. So yes, even as we absolutely must see releasing of hostages, and a condemnation and justice for the Hamas terrorists, we need to also be moving towards peace and stability in the region, and that means protecting civilian life. It means getting necessary aid and medication and water into Gaza. The concerns that the UN is highlighting about the humanitarian catastrophe that is going to strike millions of people in the coming days and weeks, that's already affecting so many, is of deep concern to us, and that's certainly what I expressed to Benny Gantz and continue to express in all my conversations.
I notice, though, you're not using the expression maximum restraint.
Oh, sorry,
Why
maximum
not?
restraint.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you very much. That's all I needed.
Janice McGregor, CBC News. I'll pick up where my colleague left off. Speaking of the word maximum restraint, you were rebuked by Prime Minister Netanyahu for saying that. He believes Israel is doing everything to keep civilians out of harm's way. Do you accept that Israel is really doing that?
I think, obviously, there are a lot of there are a lot of things that are extremely worrisome, that Canadians, that people around the world are watching and not entirely understanding. My conversations with Prime Minister Netanyahu, with Benny Gantz, with others, is about ensuring that, yes, everything is being done to protect civilian lives, because not only is the loss of women and children now heartbreaking, it is also impeding the ability of Israel to be able to see a long-term stable solution, to get to a two-state solution. Now, I've had long disagreements with Prime Minister Netanyahu on the necessity for a two-state solution, on our condemnation of settlements. That's well-established Canadian policy that goes back years, even as we continue to stand in support of the people of Israel. But supporting the people of Israel means making sure that there is a future in which there is a strong, viable, safe Jewish state of Israel alongside a strong, viable state in Palestine, or of Palestinians. And that will be Canada's continued focus, and we will continue to do everything we can to ensure that there are as few civilian casualties as possible.
And to follow up to something you said to another of my colleagues here, so you did exchange more than just hellos with President Xi. You told us what you said to him. What did he say back to you?
He acknowledged what I said.
So you're not making news on this front, on this trip. Your intention is, your strategy is to not make news on that front right now.
This trip is about engaging constructively with partners across the Indo-Pacific for the benefit of Canadians. If you don't think that doing good work with people across the Indo-Pacific is news, well, that's a reflection the media has to take. There is good work being done here, and I think that's important news for Canadians.
Thank you. This is what concludes today's press conference.
Merci beaucoup tout le monde.